Hello, my name is Sam Passey from Uintah County, Utah in the United States. And we are the first library to use Aspen Discovery and use it with Koha. And we're really excited about it. One of the reasons that we went to it was because Aspen Discovery features record grouping, a FRBRized view of the catalog. Many years ago, our library put into the Bugzilla a bug to do a FRBRized view within Koha, and that was our ideal many years ago. And we moved to Aspen Discovery when it became available. We love it, but all along the way, I've been asking, well, why can't Koha do FRBRized stuff better? And to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, let me just show you this screen real quick. And there's two components to this. In Aspen Discovery, it's a third party, well, it's supported by Bywater, it's open source, and PTFS Europe, and we're hoping to grow that community as well. That's a side conversation. Reach out to one of those vendors or the Slack channel and things if you're interested. But this, for our purposes, this sits atop Koha, uses API calls and a variety of other things to communicate and plugs into other resources. I want to just search for Harry Potter. And okay, this is the crux of what I'm interested in and what my system's been after and has with Aspen Discovery. Two things. We're wondering what it would take to get this kind of FRBRized grouped record view into Koha in the OPAC and also in the staff client. And for many of us who have moved to Aspen Discovery, one of the questions that people ask is, well, if you've got Aspen Discovery and it does this, why do you want Koha to have the record grouping too? And for us, the answer is it's a collection development tool if you can have record grouping in Koha directly, because then you can look very quickly and know what formats do I own this in without looking at many different records. It's just all right there. So this particular one, it's looking at a printed book. Now it's grouping different editions. It's pulling from Hoopla, from Overdrive, and so we've got the e-audio book from the different vendors and the e-book. And so my question is, what would it take to enable some kind of group ID function so that librarians and users can group records together, perhaps having some sort of universal grouped record database? I don't know how that would work. And I'm not talking about like what OCLDC does with MARC records, but some way to indicate that these, in the case of widely published works, if they have an ISBN number, if this is the ISBN number for the book and its various editions, it groups those with that title. Likewise with the audiobook, however that would work. I'm not a technical person, which is primarily why I moved to Aspen, but we'd really like to see this kind of group ID in the Koha staff client as well as the public OPAC, and think it could open up a lot of interesting things. So yeah, that's that. Gonna open to questions. So, part of this is I've been communicating with Bywater Solutions and a number of partners in Kansas and Utah about the potential of doing a national IMLS grant for this type of development work. What the feedback that I've heard at this conference is the key thing that we need now are actually the developers, that we have a pretty good chance of getting funding for this, but we're in need of developers, and that's spurred a whole host of side conversations that are promising. and looking forward to seeing how that comes to be. Anyway, questions, thoughts, ideas? How it does that? So again, at my novice, not a developer knowledge, that is something that I don't know. My understanding is that they for each instance of Aspen, at least those hosted by Bywater Solutions, they have a common group ID. And so one of the questions is, could that component be basically pulled out as or cloned as a standalone service that anyone could find a group ID for? And then there would need to be an ability for a user to override that. Certainly we'd want this set of features to be something people could toggle on and off. We wouldn't want to record group things that are perhaps very nuanced differences that are, if those differences are vital to your, say, special library, where in my public library, we don't care if we have 20 different printings and editions of the Harry Potter book. If it's got the same words in it, that's all we care about. We care if it's an audiobook, if it's an ebook, and perhaps what supplier those come from, because they have different terms. Other questions, thoughts? Someone already have this figured out and just don't know about it? There is a bug number on this, and this has been on the Bywater Solutions crowdsource page for a number of years, since my colleague and I put it on there. Anyway, that's it. Is there anything in the chat or? And for the record, Jason at Seckles Neckles, what Eccles are you at? All right, well, Jason wants this too. So, let's make it happen for Jason. Please. Yeah. Yeah, so for anyone who's listening online, Christopher Brannon emphasized that this is definitely a killer feature of Aspen that should come and live in Koha, in my own words. He was more eloquent than that. If you're interested in, one of the hangups is figuring out how to write this stuff into a spec. But if you're interested in that, I've bounced some ideas back and forth with Bywater, but writing a spec. The other thing is I'm an administrator. I'm a library director, so I think in budgets and things and funding cycles. We're looking at grant funding, and so we're looking at what can be delivered in a given time frame, and there's a lot of moving parts and components to this. And it's quite likely that prior to really pushing too hard on this, that as a community, we've got to energize the Perl development community, and using things like our code clubs and school, our liaisons with schools to encourage that. And then, I think that this is all related, but I'm very, very pleased with the work that's happened to get ERM into Koha. And I think that there's some underpinnings in that work that could be potentially related to helping some of this happen, some of the piping in there. There's digital asset management components that I see that can grow out of that ERM. So this is kind of all over the place, but I guess that's how open source stuff works. But thanks for your time, everyone. Appreciate it. We'll get that put in and created, and then there will be a place to gather. And I think Jesse is Yeah, Lucas and Jesse, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Anything else? Great. Great. And then, if you're interested and you can, I'm frankly, I'm better at figuring out the money side than the technology side of these kinds of things. So I'm happy to do what I can there. And if we can kind of sync up the developer community and the other bits of this. Yes, sir. So we're looking at an 18-month period from start to some level of finish. And they're rolling deadlines. So it's so we were planned on submitting last year, and then we started working on the spec a little bit and what the deliverables could look like, and realized that we needed to spend quite a bit more time doing our homework first to see what was involved, because it's easy to say, oh yeah, that'll cost $30,000. But the reality is we won't know until we know, and we won't know that until we have a very detailed look at the spec and look at the tables and what it might take to get there. And there might be some surprises along the way. It might end up being that the way Aspen does its group ID is something that can quite easily be paired out. I don't know. I don't know enough to look under the hood. Aspen is open sourced. You can look at it there's a Git repository for it. And if you are so inclined, I'm sure the Aspen developers would love people to do that. Anyway, thanks everyone.